There are a handful of movies that just flat out don't get enough credit for what they bring to the table. This could be because they're remakes that are overshadowed by the original property, something like the remake of The Crazies, or came out in the same year as another hot property, I'm thinking Near Dark getting buried by the Lost Boys, or be saddled with the heavy burden of being a sequel to an all-time classic like today's topic. Hellbound Hellraiser II came out just a year after the first one was released. In fact, it was greenlit while the first film was still in post-production, and while that could have been a recipe for disaster, this movie is something special.
Time to play.
Not only is this the last Hellraiser that really adheres to its source material until a 2022 iteration came out, but it's actually a more entertaining time than its hallowed predecessor. I have such sights to show you as we revisit Hellbound Hellraiser II. As I mentioned, Hellraiser 2 was put into production before the first one even had its first showing, but that was a gamble that paid off as Hellraiser would get good reviews and made $30 million on its meager $1 million budget.
I remember.
The original budget, for which I can't find anywhere, or really the budget that ended up going in, was going to be much higher at first, but then it was slashed after the studio looked at what they wanted to do. It ultimately didn't matter, as it still looks like it has a higher budget than the first one, and gets creative on making the movie feel like it has more locations and a grander scale than its brother.
Do you believe me? Am I crazy?
Really, it's quite amazing what they were able to do with it, considering the chief architect stepped away considerably from his role in Hellraiser. Clive Barker was the writer and director on that first movie, but the stress of it made him take a step back since this movie was shot so soon after the first one had wrapped.
What is your pleasure?
Barker would help with the story and oversee some things, but the screenplay duties were passed to Peter Atkins. Atkins took over for Michael McDowell, who had written Beetlejuice and a handful of horror episodic TV, but had to step away due to health issues and Beetlejuice rewrites.
6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot punch!
Atkins hadn't done anything on screen, but had been a playwright with Barker and would go on to write Hellraiser 3, Bloodline, and even the first Wishmaster. To take over directing duties for Barker would be Tony Randall, who was a longtime New World Pictures employee and had edited the first movie while working incredibly close with Clive. This would also be his first credited director gig, but he would go on to helm both Amityville 1992 and Ticks, which, those are really fun movies. This movie should have failed, and there's no logical reason behind it, at least until you look deeper. While the writer and director were both brand new, much of the rest of the cast and crew returned. Effects designer Bob Keane came back to give us the disgusting things seen throughout the movie, while cinematographer Robin Vidgeon and composer Christopher Young would also come back in their roles to not only make the movie feel right at home sitting next to the first entry, but even improve on things.
It is not hands that call us, it is desire.
In front of the camera, we'd see Ashley Lawrence come back as Kirsty, Sean Chapman as Frank, Claire Higgins to headline as Julia, and of course Doug Bradley as iconic Pinhead with Cenobites in tow.
We have such sights to show you.
The entire production feels uncomfortably comfortable. The basic story, with recycled footage as a recap to start, is that Kirsty is in a mental hospital trying to explain to the police and doctors the unexplainable.
Some of them come true, Mr. Ronson. Even the bad ones.
Dr. Chenard, who is at the hospital with her and is obsessed with the lament configuration, the key to the Cenobites in hell, hears her story and brings Julia back. Julia follows the steps Frank did to get his form back in the original, and her and Chenard plan to use some of the other patients at the hospital to open the doors to hell for power. This happens, but of course it's more than either bargained for, and we see a battle between a newly powerful Dr. Chenard, the Cenobites, and some unexpected guests. Kirsty and a young patient named Tiffany come out on top, but the cycle is doomed to repeat itself.
The doctor. Is he?
That story sounds fine and all, but what else makes Hellbound so good? The main reason is the understanding of what makes a Hellraiser movie special.
I've come for my father!
Kirsty has to deal with the resurrected Julia, a power-hungry Chenard, the death of her boyfriend, who I always forget is Gorman from Aliens, and nobody wanting to believe her story. It takes 50 minutes, 50, to pass in the runtime before we see Pinhead and his cohorts, besides the mini backstory at the beginning of how Pinhead came to be. They aren't even the biggest villains of the movie, with a trapped Frank running around, Julia reincarnated, and especially Uber Chenard after he gets his transformation.
I'm taking over this operation.
That's one of the biggest things. Clive knew in the first movie, and those that took over here know it as well. The Cenobites should be the destination, not the whole journey. While the direct-to-video lineage of these movies are the most egregious in their overuse of Pinhead specifically, some even turning him into a 2-bit slasher villain, even 3 and 4 make it a point to have these bad guys front and center.
I will teach your human merchant about the value of suffering.
The movie's called Hellraiser, not the Cenobites' Bogus Journeys. That brings me to my next point of what makes this movie not only good, but better than its predecessor.
Jesus wept.
Its hell is very much an idea, more than a place. We don't need the 7 circles that Dante introduced in his Inferno to be scary. Frank's personal hell is being stuck with women that he can't have in a place that he can't escape. It's not fire and brimstone that hurts him physically over and over again, it's an emotional torture that won't leave his mind and that he physically can't do anything about. I'm curious what we would have seen in Julia's own personal hell, or even someone like poor Larry, who was originally supposed to be dragged into this place too. One draft of the screenplay, they were kind of stitched together until Kirsty was able to save her dad and even escape with him at the end of the movie. This was all changed, but did lead to that strange scene that was on the back of the VHS and early DVD boxes that showed the Cenobites as surgeons. It's a deleted scene you can watch on any of the newer box sets that finally give clarity to the mystery of what that scene was and where it came from. Anyway, hell here is a confusing and frightening place, but more importantly, it's a very personal one. While the budget here ended up being certainly more than the $1 million of the first one, it was still cut down, which changed the script and certain scenes around, but that absolutely doesn't feel like they took that budget out of the gore. From Julia taking her turn as a skinless zombie to the crazy patient slicing imaginary bugs off himself, Hellbound delivers on the goods. That patient, by the way, is also the same guy who plays skinless Frank writing "Help me, I'm in hell" on the wall of Kirsty's room. Really though, the whole movie feels like a Halloween Horror Nights walkthrough, and I mean that in the best possible way. All the bodies hung up that Julia took the life force from, the hospital itself with the other patients trying to solve the various boxes, the confusing layout of hell, and the leftovers of the house in the first movie are all great set pieces that I can envision walking through. And that score. The score is just as crisp and epic as the first movie and fits in with the beautiful matte painting at the center of hell. While I enjoyed seeing Frank again, and Julia having her very own Frank moment, Chenard is the better villain. He seems meek at first as he tries to figure out what exactly waits for him on the other side, and is trusting of Julia to get him there, but when he's transformed, and boy is it ever a transformation, he becomes a force to be reckoned with.
I hesitated.
He even asks himself why he hesitated. He has blades that are sharper than any scalpel he is accustomed to using, and the look is fitting for what he's become. If there's anything I can complain about, it's that he becomes almost a Freddy-like one-liner spitting bad guy, which just doesn't fit here.
Hey!
It does make sense with where we were at in the Nightmare on Elm Street series, but it isn't needed in Hellraiser. The battle he has with Pinhead and his cronies is great, if a little short, and it's awesome to see the Cenobites turn into the people they were before agreeing to be Hell's personal pain army. The Chatterer as a child is horrifying and so deliciously unexpected. Hellbound Hellraiser II just shouldn't work. It lost its writer and director, had its budget slashed in the middle of production, and was rushed to come out just the following year from its predecessor. It's also a horror sequel, and we know the path that those entries usually take, but somehow, in spite of all of its obstacles, the movie turned out to be a faster paced, gorier, and a lot more horrifying than the first. It's better because it took what made the first one good and made the elements great. Even with recycled footage and similar ideas, it somehow manages to feel fresh and engaging while audiences were still grappling with what the first one was. It's unfortunate that it gets lost in the pantheon of great horror sequels, but even above that, it sits in an even more exclusive and elusive class of being a better movie as a sequel. Hellbound is the best Hellraiser movie and should be given the attention it's due. Give it a revisit and enjoy wondering about what your own experience would be if you solved the box and they came.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.